It really is all about our nutrition and how we eat and how we fuel ourselves.
This week's guest is Rhian Stevenson.
I'm a naturopath and nutritionist. I was a very sickly child. You can change how you feel just by the food that you eat. We need to learn how to cook again. That was just so impactful for me in everything I've done since. There's certain foods that are designed, it's supposed to hijack our brain.
It's so hard when you're a mum though, isn't it?
We've got a lot of stuff we need to work on, but it's almost impossible to work on it when you don't know what your baseline is.
Just a quick one, please follow wherever you get your podcasts. We've got some great guests coming up and you will not want to miss it. Welcome, Rhian. It's really lovely to meet you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. But first of all, could you just give a brief introduction to who you are and what you've been doing over the past few years?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Rhian, obviously. I'm a naturopath and nutritionist, and I run a nutrition brand called Arta. So Arta was founded in 2021, and it's a nutrition and food supplement brand that's really aimed at helping you live with more energy, right? So we do supplements, we do nutrition plans, and they're all kind of meant to help you live better, feel better, and just function at your best. Prior to that, I was the CEO of a fitness brand, and I'm originally from Canada, so I've been here now for about 15 years.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'm really excited to go into your golden moment. So
I feel a little self-conscious about it compared to your other guests, but I think hopefully it's going to be something people can relate to.
Yeah, and that's what I love, that everyone's golden moment is slightly different. And there's, we all have this expectation of what everyone's golden moment's going to be, but it's often very different. Yeah. So do you want to briefly explain to myself and our audience what your golden moment is?
I was a very sickly child. So from the age of about 6, I had chronic sinus infections. I had chronic migraines. I had stomach issues. I had to sleep propped up because I had acid reflux. I was just super unwell. I was probably on 5 to 8 courses of antibiotics a year. I was exhausted. And I just felt like my body was my enemy. I went to so many specialists. My mom took me to everybody, and everybody said, you're fine. Like, they couldn't find something that was wrong. Finally, we went to a psychiatrist on the recommendation of one of our doctors, and they said, maybe she just doesn't like going to school. And I was like, no, I love school. It's not that. So the diagnosis was kind of like, she's fine, even though we knew I was not fine. And it turned out, actually, later on, we found out that I had an allergy to the protein in milk. So I had an allergy to cow's milk. And so when I found this out and I took it out of my diet, my whole life changed. It transformed. It was like a form of liberation from my body and my health ailments, and it just changed my whole life. So that's really my golden moment.
That's amazing. And there's so many questions that I have, and I want to delve into that even more. So do you want to share with us the first item that you have brought in today? I'm really excited to see this lovely pink bottle come out.
So anyone with chronic gut issues knows this brand. This is Pepto-Bismol. Obviously, it was something that I carried with me all the time. I also had to carry Tums. I had to carry anti-inflammatories, painkillers. I just had a backpack full of medications because I just felt so unwell. And I remember that I always used to panic if I forgot to take them with me because, again, I felt like I needed them to get through my day. So I was always really sick. My doctor just thought I had a really weak immune system because I always had problems with my stomach. I was always on antibiotics. So, that started happening from the age of maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I was tested for lactose intolerance, but I was never tested for cow protein allergy because it's less common when you're not an infant. And so I think because that was missed, the thought was just I just had a bit of a weak immune system. And it just got worse and worse as I aged. And then I was trying to do well at school. I was trying to swim, and that just made me even more tired. So it just got worse from there on.
How did that affect you mentally?
Yeah, I just felt really foggy. I think that's the best way to describe it. So I had a really hard time concentrating. I would often fall asleep in class. So the teachers were like, what's wrong with her? I felt really self-conscious going to parties or going to sleepovers. When you're young, it's like the highlight of your month. But I couldn't stay awake. I had to bring all my stuff with me, like my pills, my Pepto. I couldn't really eat well. I would always have a headache. So it just impacted every single aspect of my life. And so I think when I finally found out and I cut it all out, the brain fog, it went away almost immediately. And I was like it was like a light switch was just switched on. And it was so transformative. was amazing.
And so was your mother really onto it? She obviously was fighting for you to have tests and to really work out what it was.
Yeah.
What went against all that? Was it the system? Was it the medical system? Like how hard was that struggle to be heard?
We went to doctors, and each time they said something was okay, my mom was like, but it's not okay, right? Like, obviously, okay, it's fantastic that there isn't this one thing wrong that you thought, but we have to keep looking and searching. And so she was a real advocate. And I think, though, by the time you've been around to kind of everyone, you feel a bit at loss, right? And that's when I went to see a physician who was more kind of into functional medicine and naturopathy and nutrition. And that's when we actually found out. So I think that she had a really hard time, and people were like, oh, she just has a weak constitution. And my mom was like, a weak daughter?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just hard, right? Because you don't want to seem like you're paranoid or you're creating something. And as an adult, I'm sure so many of us have been to the doctor where they're like, you're okay. And it's like a difficult patient. But you just know, you just know in your body that there's something wrong.
And I think as a mother, you know as well, don't you?
For
you
sure.
know
for sure.
if there's something that's not 100% right with your child. And if there's these constant issues, but you're going and you're not getting the answers, then it's something that, you know, you just want to keep fighting for. You want an answer, and you know that there's something that's not been uncovered.
Yeah. And also, there were certain things with me that were just so obviously wrong, right? Like for a 13-year-old to have to sleep propped up because of acid reflux is a bit insane. It's not like our diets were totally packed with ultra-processed. Like my mom was raised on a farm, so like they were very about fresh food. She cooked everything. Yes, of course, we had the usual stuff. You know, we had the Twinkies and all of that. That's really big there. But I mean, it's the majority of our diets were healthy. Yeah. So it's just abnormal to have that.
Which is a lot to say for, I think back to my generation growing up here in England and, you know, those kind of early teenage years. It was the era of the microwave and, you know, all the processed foods. And, you know, you think back to those times and obviously how we're so health conscious now. And we really understand, you know, the damage that processed foods have done to us or are doing to us.
Sometimes.
Yeah, you think about those days and actually, you know, your parents were very much on, you know, on the nutrition and understanding what was right to put in your body at that time. So the impact was probably even bigger, knowing that there was something that just wasn't right.
Yeah. And then also like my mom, although she's health conscious, I grew up in the low fat era, right? So everything was okay if it was low fat.
Yeah.
So we'd be having things that are super high in sugar or really ultra processed, but it's okay.
It's low fat, so it's fine.
It's totally fine.
Yeah. So what changed once you had the diagnosis? How did life change for you after that point?
I mean, everything changed. So I woke up with energy for the first time ever. I could concentrate at school for the first time ever. I didn't have to take all the stuff that I used to take. And I was like, this is wild. We aren't taught about basic nutrition education, and it's a problem. And because of that, we're led into like, oh, I must eat this so I can be thin, or we just have a really a backwards view of what food actually is because we're never taught. And so I learned at a very young age that the food we eat will change our life for the better. And so I was always very motivated to be healthy because the alternative for me was just pain. Not only was just so happy to have energy, but then my grades got better, my swimming improved without any kind of a change to how I trained. I started to go from placing like 28th at meets to first to second. So that was exciting. And then I just got so inspired that I decided that this is something I wanted to do for my whole life, right?
And so this led massively into your golden moment, really. Did you continue swimming all the way through those
I went through
years?
University,
So you must have felt such a difference once you had your diagnosis and you started to feel your energy levels rising and you're feeling more confident in yourself.
Because obviously the thing that changed everything was understanding why I felt sick.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't one moment in particular, but it was then just the improvement I saw over 6 months or 1 year. And I know without a doubt that if I hadn't fixed my nutrition, I wouldn't have been able to keep swimming. And swimming has shaped my character in such a strong way. Like, as you know, sport is just so influential on your character, on your discipline, on a growth mindset. It's so empowering. And I would never have been able to keep swimming, which was just such... that was like my big love, right?
Your
I just
passion.
loved it. Yeah. And so I just felt so strong and vibrant after feeling so unwell that it just made me more positive too. Like you can change how you feel just by the food that you eat. You can change your confidence just by getting into a workout that's hard and getting through it. And so that was just so impactful for me in everything I've done since.
And it really often takes those moments like you don't fully appreciate how good it feels to be healthy, do you? Until you're poorly.
Well, I also think we live in a culture where we're told that it's normal to feel bad, right? Especially women. It's normal to have really bad period pains or headaches or be low energy. And so we just accept that. And unless you have done something to show you otherwise, then you're just like, oh, okay, I guess this is just how we feel.
Just accepting.
We just get worse and worse and worse as we age. And actually, that doesn't have to happen. And it's not always easy, but it's quite simple, right? It's quite straightforward about how we can take care of ourselves to feel better.
When there are so many supplement brands springing up, it's so refreshing to find one that I trust when it comes to quality and impact. Arta's award-winning range, which targets everything from gut health and energy to metabolism and longevity, is formulated with great care by their passionate founder, Rhiann Stevenson. Arta's supplements combine the highest quality ingredients to deliver results that you can really feel. No half measures, no cutting corners, just innovative formulas designed to work. Taking care of my body is so critical to how I perform, how I feel every day, and ultimately how I age. I'm loving their new multivitamin Advanced Multi-Nutrient. This multi has an impressive list of over 40 vitamins, minerals, and herbs with specialized ingredients like wild blueberry, turmeric, sage. The list goes on. Right now, you can save 20% across their range with the code GOLDMINES. Head to arta.co today. And so, show us your lovely second
I'm surprised I have this in England, but this was my first ever fast skin.
Look at that.
This was my competition swimsuit. And I remember I got this actually just after I found out about my allergy. And I was at Youth Nationals. And in the morning, I had swum terribly. I mean, it was horrible. I was hoping to come in the top 3. I just made it into the B final, which is like 16th. So I was like in lane 8 of the B final. I was super upset. I just got this and I tried it on. It felt really weird because it was so tight. And I remember just going into the race and being like, what is wrong with you? Like, you have this opportunity now. Because I think from being ill for so long, it really knocked my confidence. And so I kind of gave myself this pep talk about how far I'd come. And I remember the race so vividly because I dove in and I was going so fast that I actually thought that I miscounted because I was so far ahead of the other lanes. I looked up at the clock and I was like, what is this split? Like, this doesn't even make sense. So I was swimming terrified that I was going to stop at 150 because it was a 200.
Yeah.
And I touched in and I was like, oh my God. And it was just so much faster than I had ever gone. And it wasn't a huge meet, but for me, it was so huge because it signified like the next part of my life. I just loved it.
I love that. Can I have a quick feel as well?
Of course you can, yeah.
I mean, and swimming as well. It's one of those sports that's so physically demanding on the body and the mind as well. Like how has your mindset been shaped by those years of competing? Because I know obviously, you know, spending years in the sport, it shapes who you are as an individual.
Yeah.
You know, you have all these kind of values and ingrained parts of your personality that are brought together by your determination to achieve something within your sport. How has it shaped your mindset?
I think one of the things that it's really done incredibly well for is just having a growth mindset, right? Which is so important for business because we are getting less and less accustomed to people giving us feedback. And when you've been coached your whole life, you're used to getting feedback every single day, even when you do well, right? So like you do well and you're like, I nailed it. And they're like, yes, but, you know, and then they give you more. And you know that the feedback is there because they want you to win, right? And so I think that's a difference between people who have been in a coaching environment is I crave it. I craved being coached. I crave getting feedback and understanding how I can do better, and I don't take it personally. And I think that that's one of the things that it's really helped with. Another thing, of course, is just hard work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just hard. And so I feel like I've got quite a good kind of appetite for hard work, and I can push myself hard and just not get upset about it and not feel too overwhelmed. It's just something that I'm built for now. So I think those things. But then also, I think just having the understanding of how good you can feel, right? And how much your mindset can be influenced by a good workout. Right. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about sport is when you've grown up in sport, it makes it easier to exercise your entire life, which is important, right? Only 27% of women meet the minimum recommendations for exercise, and that falls to 15% when we're pregnant, right? So it's so important.
It's so crazy. And I think that you're right. It's that relationship that you set up with exercise and sport from a young age. Because I think if you're, a young girl that's found their way into a sport that they love, and there's a passion there and there's a hobby, you have that positive relationship with exercising.
Super positive.
It's not like you join a gym or your sport when you're a teen where you want to then change the way you look. It's about actually, I just love exercising. I feel all the physical benefits, but all the mental benefits as well. And that's really hard to pick that up once you've missed that chunk of time that window as a young girl.
There's also just a confidence thing, which is how do I do it, right? Like, how do I do it safely and effectively? But then also, as you know, if you start anything new, it doesn't feel good at the start, right? So then it takes a couple months. And so it's so challenging to start it when something's wrong or if you think you look bad, right? Having that intrinsic motivation, being like, no, this is going to set my head right. This is going to help me feel good. And it's really helped me, throughout every phase.
And how has your relationship with exercise and fitness changed over the years?
To be totally honest, it's never changed. I love it still. And I still rely on it to make me feel good. I exercised a ton when I was pregnant, which I think got me through it. I exercise when I need some headspace. I probably, if I want to poke holes in that, I probably turn to it too much. Whereas maybe I should focus on something like meditation more or stress management, because as you know, although it can be such a good way to relieve your stress, it's also a stress on your body, right? So there's probably times in my life where I've over-exercised at the cost of something else, just because it's what I know, right?
It's that kind of relationship of knowing that's what you did as an athlete. And as you go through those later phases in life, and like you say, pregnancy or postnatally or beyond, you kind of have to start moving your body and exercising in a slightly different way, don't you? Less punishing.
Yeah, and I love this. This might sound horrible, but I love those punishing sets where you just go and you give it everything, and I just think there's nothing. You feel so incredible afterwards. But when you've just had a baby and a C-section and you're underslept, that's not what you should be doing, right? And so I think I really had to adjust my mindset to being like, okay, well, what's a restorative way? Maybe it doesn't have to be a crazy session. Maybe I need to do some yoga or even just a walk, or maybe I should take a nap.
And so moving into your final item here, you've got a lovely picture that you wanted to share with us. Can you just describe to us who's in the picture?
Yeah,
so what does it mean to you?
This is Connor. He's our head of ops and impact. This is Olive. She was our head of brand. And this is me, obviously. And this is when we got our first supplement in. And it was just such a proud moment, because supplements for me were such an integral part of how I healed.
Yes.
And nutrition was, of course, the foundation, and we still do nutrition, but having my own line where I could feel like I was helping others who may have been in the same place as me, it was just such a proud moment. So that's really the culmination of really everything. Because also, like, when I ran the fitness brand, it was fantastic, because what we really wanted to do was get everybody kind of to fall in love with the transformative effect of movement, right? And I think we did a good job. But also, so many people were still saying the same thing. They were still exhausted. They still had IBS. They still had so many issues that are not just going to magically go away when you exercise. And so I just started to think, wow, like, it really is all about our nutrition and how we eat and how we fuel ourselves. And so coming full circle and going back into nutrition was just such an exciting thing for me.
And it's such an interesting area because I think particularly for women, I think it's so hard to, we're constantly changing, aren't we? We're going through all these different phases in our lives. Our hormones are constantly changing. You have all these symptoms of different things, whether it's, pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, your skin change, like there's all these things you have to deal with.
Everything changes all the time.
Yeah. And then there's like all these supplements and there's, this nutritional advice. How do we as women navigate our way through?
Yeah.
Because there's so much out there. It's how do we find the right things for us? And it's to the point where we're not just taking everything as well. I don't want to be rattling around. I want to take something that's
like I was
great
when I was a kid.
For me. Yeah. That's going to have the biggest impact.
Yeah, so I think what's really important to understand is food is the foundation, right? When you look at any kind of biohacker, everybody does the same foundational things, right? They focus on a predominantly whole food diet that is kind of void of added sugar and ultra-processed food. They focus on sleep quality because it's so important. They focus on movement. They focus on some kind of form of proactive stress management, right? And like those are the fundamentals, and everybody agrees on the same thing. And I think it's easy for us to get sucked into like a fad because that stuff is pretty boring, right? I mean, it's foundational and it's so important, but it's not like something that excites me. It's not like a magic food I can add to my smoothie that's going to make me well.
Yeah, the one instant
that one thing.
Yeah.
There's no magic bullet, and that's why I think it's so easy to get sucked into a fad. Like, it's seed oil, and that's the root of all my evils, or it's this one powder. So really, like the first thing is you really just need to focus on the basics, on the foundationals. Of course, I think you should take probably a good quality multivitamin that has vitamin D3 in it, but like start with those things first. And, our nutrition plans they're kind of short. They're like 30 days or they're 21 days. And they're very specific because what I want to happen is to show people how much your energy and your mood can change if you just commit to yourself for 30 days, right? And people are shocked. Like they start to wake up with energy, their skin gets better, their guts get better, right? The supplements are there to supplement you, right?
Yeah.
They shouldn't be the thing you are relying on solely. So I think it's that's why we don't just use the pills, right? We do supplements and nutrition because it's so important.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of going back to the sporting context as well. You think about rehab. It's the boring bits, isn't it?
So boring. It's the physio.
No one wants to do the physio, the small bits of rehab that you have to do. It's that maintenance, isn't it? That base layer that we have to have to, help enhance whether it's, our physical, our nutrition, our mental, whatever it might be. Yeah. But actually it's so hard to teach that in this world where everybody wants something so instantly. Yeah. Like 30 days to, most young 20-year-olds. It's just so long.
They won't
they want it instantly. How do you navigate your way through that with the brand?
Yeah, look, it's really hard. And I think that it's counterintuitive, right? Because we want to keep everything in and we want to make like one small change and kind of add it all in, but we're also really impatient and kind of doing one tiny thing at a time. When your base is very poor, it's not going to make you feel better fast enough, and then most people will quit. Likewise, if you go too extreme too quickly, people are like, I can't sustain this, right? So even though ours are 30 days, in my mind, you're still eating a lot. You're still eating tons of fruit and vegetables and legumes and your proteins. It's just a very kind of whole food and stripped down way of eating. And I think that we all just need to get our head around the fact that there's no quick fix with sport, with sleep, with food. You have to do the work and it takes time and it's really worthwhile. And the reason also I love to do the 30 days is because we have so many little habits that we don't actually know just erode our health. One of them, for example, is alcohol, right? So if you're trying to add in a few tiny things, like maybe a punnet of wild blueberries, right? Once a week, because those have been shown to improve your cognition. If you're drinking 14 units a week, which is what the NHS says is acceptable, you're not going to feel better after 30 days. You really... In my mind, it's so useful to cut things out for short term, to see how your body just responds and levels out, and then add things back in and then see, right? It's a game of patience. It's also kind of a test and learn. There are going to be some things that are super healthy for some, which some people just can't tolerate, like with me with milk. So when you cut it all back and eat a very simple and wholesome diet for 30 days, you don't have alcohol, you avoid ultra-processed foods, and then you slowly add things in, your body's going to tell you. Your body is going to say, I don't like this, and you're going to get a headache or your stomach will be off, right? So we have so much knowledge with what our body is trying to tell us, but we just don't know how to hear it yet. And so I think that's one of the really good things about trying to commit to a time frame where you're just really kind of solid with your basics.
So would that be cutting all the bad stuff out for 30? I was going to say 30 months. That's a long time, isn't it?
Yes, yes. You said
30 weeks. So that
for 30 days.
30
I was like, that's also
that's still
much
a long
longer
time,
than,
isn't it?
That's not what I'm saying. You don't have to do 30 weeks. Yeah.
30 days.
Yeah. 30 days.
So that's, you'd say, all whole foods, no alcohol, all just pure, raw.
Real food.
Real food.
Real food, baby. Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, it sounds hard though, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds so simple and yet it's so hard.
Yeah.
Right?
I think because we're unaware of all the little things.
And we're so used to convenience, right? We just grab things.
And I'm loving my cellular hydration, so I'll keep it going.
Oh, wonderful.
Keep it going.
I take advanced multi-nutrient.
Yeah.
I take NAD and I take cellular hydration.
Yeah.
Those are my norms. Cellular hydration, I take like if I train.
So like one a day?
Yeah, one a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. More in the summer. Also, it just helps me. What I notice is because I don't sleep a lot, like mid-afternoon, I get quite tired. And when we're all tired, we're like, oh, should I have something sweet? But actually, when I have
coffee or sugar.
Yeah, I can't drink coffee that late because I'm someone who's very caffeine sensitive. So then I'll stay up. So I tend to have cellular hydration instead. And I'm like, boing, so that's where it's really great.
Yeah.
I used to take more, but with the multi, I've been able to consolidate, right? That's my base. I think it doesn't have to be as much as some people think, right?
Yeah, so that's your bag of goodies now. Forget the Pepto and the other things. You've got a nice set of goodies to keep you healthy.
Yeah, and it's funny because with the NAD, actually, I didn't think it was going to impact me that much just because I know it's great for longevity. I know what the science says, but I was like, well, I'm super healthy. Like, this isn't going to impact me. But I took it at a time. So I started it last year when it came out, and my baby was only 1. And again, like my kids are the worst. They just don't like to sleep. And I was so exhausted that I noticed my brain fog after my second baby. I mean, I was trying to recall words, not challenging words. Like I was like, what's the shoe? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so dumb. Like, what is wrong with me? And as soon as I started taking that, my mental clarity was just like, and it was amazing.
A game changer.
It was game changer.
Wow.
But lack of sleep is it's a killer. It's a killer for your cognition. It's a killer for your mood.
Brutal. It's honestly so brutal. It affects everything, doesn't it? And you only realize that until, when you have no sleep, the impact that a good night's sleep really does have.
Yeah. And when I think about 2 months ago, we got into a really good phase where they were both like pretty much sleeping from like 11 until 5:30. And I was like, so for like 2 weeks, I got like incredible sleep and then it went back. And then like the contrast of going back to good sleep and then going back again.
Oh, that's rough. That is a rough journey.
I was like, I would rather have not had it.
Because I tasted it.
Yeah, I tasted the sweet nectar of sleep. And then I went back. But what do you take?
It gets better. It gets better. I think you've just got to... not have a taste of the nectar and go back. That's
mine just tag team. So when Maisie sleeps well, Lola does not sleep well. When Lola sleeps well, Maisie doesn't sleep well. And Maisie for a really long time had night terrors, which are just so disturbing. And then because I'm a founder also, when I wake up, because like when you wake up and have to walk upstairs and like interact, then you're mentally alert, right?
Yeah. And then you start thinking about the day.
Then I'm like, so then I'm like sleep tonic because I need to just like zonk out.
Zone out again.
Yeah. My husband's often like, I wake up in the night and I'm fine. I'm like, don't you dare, because you don't go upstairs.
Their brains don't function like ours do.
Also,
just saying.
You don't. Like when you wake up, you maybe read your Kindle for 5 minutes, you fall back asleep. You don't have to go upstairs and change the bed sheets and do all the things and like,
fully wake you up.
Fully wake up. Yeah.
you say you get used to certain things, and I was taking some other electrolytes and I just got used to them. And now I've started taking the cellular hydration. I'm actually like, well, there's so much sweetener and stuff in the other one that I was taking, but you just don't realize because that's what you're used to, really.
Yeah. And also, like, when you do the 30 days, which, like, it's so shocking that feels like a long time, because it's nothing, but it feels like a lot, right?
Yeah.
When you cut out all the sugar, like, what you realize is how addictive that is. And actually, when you bring it back in, it doesn't taste like food. It tastes like chemical. So when you've done a bit of a cleanse, when you haven't had any added sugar, and you eat an apple, the apple by week 4, it tastes so good. It tastes so sweet. There's so much flavor in it. When you then try to eat something hyper sweet again, like a candy or a piece of cake, you're like, oh gosh, this actually isn't that good. Yeah. We can train ourselves to be more and more addicted to the sweet stuff, and it's hedonic too. So you're like, oh, I need more and more and more, and it doesn't satiate us. But then you can unlearn that as well. And when you do that, it's so empowering.
Because you do have these little chocolate biscuits things, little thingy things that I really like, and I'll have one, and then I'll have another one, and I actually can't control myself. I'm just like going because that's what's in there. They're so addictive, aren't they?
They're designed to be that way. Yeah.
So
and
bad.
Like, the food company has a team of people who work on the flavor. And the flavor isn't like what's going to taste best. It's what's going to make you eat the fastest and the most. And I think that one of the things I hate hearing people say is everything in moderation, right? Because there's certain foods that are designed to be eaten more and more and more, right? It's these hedonic foods where if you keep them in the house and you expect yourself to have enough willpower to white and knuckle through what the food scientists have designed to be addictive, you're crazy. Like, it's not going to happen. You're setting yourself up for failure. Not only do you then eat so many more calories of the empty calories, but then you have shame. You feel like, oh, I have no willpower. I didn't do it. I've fallen off. I'll start again Monday. And there's certain foods that I think you just shouldn't keep in the house. Like, make it hard to get that stuff. If you feel you want something sweet, you can bake some cookies, put them in the freezer, and pull it out when you want one. You're not going to eat 15 of them, right? So it's just all about relearning these things and understanding that it's not our fault. So we shouldn't be hard on ourselves. It's hard to control ourselves around that kind of stuff because it's supposed to hijack our brain. One of the things that I wholeheartedly think is that we need to learn how to cook again, right? We've kind of lost the connection to cooking. And so it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be super easy. It can be really fast. But like, we should learn how to prepare a meal that we know is going to fuel us. And so many of us don't know how to do that. So also when you commit to doing this kind of a plan, it gives you that time in the kitchen. Now, some of us might think I don't have that time, but I promise you, once you start, if you know what you're doing, which is why there's a plan there, it's not as hard as you think.
Yeah.
And then from there, you decide what you keep, right? You don't have to be that clean forever, and it's not sustainable. And of course, you should be able to enjoy food and eat easily. But if you're not feeling and functioning well as a baseline, then I'd say it's worth it.
And so what's the impact? Because I'm so interested in the whole nutritional side and supplements. And as an athlete, we were I suppose I was really conscious about what I put in my body from a nutritional aspect, but also from a drug testing aspect as 100%. Well. So I wouldn't even really take paracetamol. I was so obsessed with not taking anything. Of course, it's not worth it. Because it's just not worth it. But then as I've left athletics and I've retired and I'm in a different phase of my life, I feel like I'm more accepting to have those little boosts to try and help, supplement my diet as it is now. But it's so hard to know how much and what to take. So at the moment, tough. I'm, multivitamins, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin C. But is there one supplement that makes the biggest difference for women?
So there's a good quality multi, I think, is really key, especially for women. The National Diet and Nutrition Survey showed that women in particular don't get 9 of the core micronutrients from food alone. Now, there's of course flaws with that because it's based on nutrition surveys, but I would venture a guess that we over-report the good things and we under-report the bad stuff. From my years looking at food logs, and also with me, right? If you ask me how much coffee I drink, I'd be like, 2 a day. It's probably, actually, if I wrote it down, it'd probably be more like 4 or 5, right? So we need all these foundational things. So a good quality multi that has your D3 in it, especially in this country, that has some mag in it, that has all the minerals, I think is essential. And I think it's also important not to expect the world from your supplements. Like I said, it's really about food and making the changes to move towards a healthful diet. But as you also know, it can just be really hard. It can take months to years to change habits, right? So why wouldn't you make sure in the interim that you're getting what you need? And I know from a personal point of view too, I mean, my diet is good because I'm a nutritionist, so you would think it would be, but I don't even get enough. It's hard. And then I don't sleep well. I like to train hard. And I don't sleep well because I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old who just don't like to sleep.
Impact.
Yeah. So like I just have had very few full nights sleep in the last 5 years. And so I don't have to take it, but do I feel better when I take it? Yes, right? I sleep better when I take mag, and my muscles feel much better when I take it. So there's about what you actually need, and there's about also what you can take to help you thrive. And I think it's about, your appetite for what you want to do. You have to take a step back and look at your life, right? I probably won't take it as much in 10 years as I take now, but that's on the assumption that my kids are sleeping and I'm maybe not as chronically stressed. So it will vary, right? And then all the different life phases too, you need certain things at certain times. When I was trying to get pregnant, I took a prenatal, of course. When I had my babies, I took one too, because it takes so long to build everything back up. So there are certain things that can just be incredibly helpful.
I think so. Having education around nutrition is the biggest thing, isn't it? It's like you just said there, it's knowing when you need a bit extra of something or taking back on something. And I think the impact on sleep as well that you just mentioned is so important. I think we're often, in this world where, there's not enough time to, rest properly and allow our bodies to recover what we're putting them through. But the impact of supplements and nutrition on sleep is huge, right?
Yeah. And especially when you look at what we're kind of trained to do from a cultural point of view is we've had a hard day, so we have some alcohol just to calm us down. And that might make us feel a bit sleepy at the start, but anyone who's worn an Oura ring knows that actually with alcohol, that's one of the things that impacts our sleep the most.
It's so hard when you're a mum though, isn't it? Because you kind of, you are conditioned to, I've had a really busy day, or, get the kids to bed, I'm just going to have a little glass of wine to unwind. But then...
Yeah, but look, if you're somebody, and I assume you're someone like this, but if you're someone who feels well, who functions well, who's healthy, who can still do all the things kind of high performance, and you don't drink often, I don't necessarily think you're the type of person who would need to do that. That's not the norm, right? Like your niche, you're an Olympian. So I wouldn't really say you're the norm. But like for other people, like my husband, for example, when we met, he was like, I don't drink that much. And I was like, oh. And then when he actually like logged it, he was like, oh my gosh.
Shocking, yeah.
Yeah. And then for women too, I mean, I do a lot of talks in the space of women's health. And I remember one I did last year, and we were talking about alcohol and fertility. And the bottom line is fertility.org says even one drink per week can affect your fertility. But that's not the messages that we get, right? The NHS says 14 units a week is fine. And you're like, where's the disconnect? Because breastcancer.org is like, even one drink a week can increase your risk. So women are different. And I think we've been clumped into a lot of the general guidelines. But unfortunately, especially with things like alcohol, because it is a carcinogen, we need to be more mindful. Again, it's probably not you, but we're kind of taught to think it's totally fine.
Yeah.
One of the most important things I think that we can all do is just keep a food log, a lifestyle log, because it's so easy to get into patterns where we actually have no idea how much we're eating. In the UK, only 3 out of 5 of us hit the 5 a day. I think only 5% of women hit the RDA of fiber. The average adult only eats 18 out of the recommended 30 grams of fiber per day. So like we've got a lot of stuff we need to work on, but it's almost impossible to work on it when you don't know what your baseline is, right? So even just making a log with no judgment, no criticism, and you'll notice patterns, right? And if you can jot down how you feel on top of that is even better, right? Because we have so much info at our disposal, but we just kind of don't use it.
Yeah, and I think we've got a good way of tracking things. We can track our exercise, our sleep, so we can create this baseline, but it's knowing actually how it's changing from day to day, because you kind of, as women, you are accepting of, I just have this headache that happens all the time. It's just normal, or I feel like this and that's just how I should feel. But actually the enhancements that we can make to our lives are huge, but it's knowing what is our normal as women.
Yeah. And when I was in high school and when I was still eating all of the dairy products, my period pain was excruciating. I mean, it was excruciating. And as I've refined what I eat and cut things out, I mean, I don't have any pain now. And that for me was really eye-opening, even though I learned about that in my training, that actually having a very painful period isn't normal. It's common, but it's not the norm.
Yeah.
It's shocking when you try something out and it works, right? Because we're just told like, oh, it's normal, take some painkillers. And I think for us too, like we're loaded up on painkillers from teenagers, just to take this. And so we just lose the connection with our bodies. And I think that kind of continues on throughout fertility, through pregnancy, through menopause. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, it's a lack of control, isn't it? It's almost feeling like you have to just accept, as opposed to, more body literacy, understanding how our bodies do change as women. I think young girls, you're educated about the basics, but you don't understand how your hormones are changing. You don't understand what foods are probably good to eat at different phases, or how to exercise your body at the right phase.
Yeah.
And if you look into, the whole world of gender, like the gender data gap is huge. Like there's not enough research, not enough funding or energy put into understanding women and doing research projects on women. Yeah. And that is honestly blown my mind over the past past few years, to understand how wide that gap is.
Yeah, and for the longest time, women were excluded from clinical trials because they were too variable. But you're like, well, that's us, so you have to study that. And it's changing now, but I mean, it's just such a poor experience for so many of us. I remember after giving birth to my first, I went through a phase where I just knew something was wrong. So I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. I was super wired. I was having kind of heart palpitations. I felt really anxious, but anxious in a way that I didn't think was normal. So I went to the doctor and I explained what was happening. And the doctor said some women find the transition to motherhood really hard. And then they recommended I go on an anti-anxiety. And I was like, so not only did I leave feeling like such a failure, like here I am, somebody who thinks I'm really strong and I'm all about health. And what my doctor has just told me is I'm just not doing a good enough job. It's just hard. And actually, when I pulled myself together, because I was so upset, I called them back. I complained. I got another doctor. And actually, I had postpartum thyroiditis, which is very common. So I had gone hyperthyroid, which was causing my symptoms. And actually, so as women, you really have to also advocate for yourself. Until we get to a better place, you really have to push.
But that's so hard, because so many women would just get, lost almost and just, take the pills or whatever they're prescribed and not really understand that other women are going through similar situations, and that there's a way, like an alternative route to feeling back to yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's where we have to understand, like, the system that we have here. It's in so many ways, it's incredible, right? But it's not set up for kind of the creation of health. And so that's where, for the time being, we need to take matters into our own hands a little bit. We have to learn about nutrition. We really have to lean in to good quality sleep, to managing our lifestyle, to cutting back on alcohol and ultra-processed foods, to really trying to get those foundations in check, because it's really hard.
Do you feel like it's changing? So the past, you obviously set the company up in 2021, was it? Do you feel like it is changing, women's health, the understanding around women's health and nutrition?
Yeah, I think they're investing a lot into trying to change it. I do think that people are getting more open to it. I think there's a growing awareness of better diagnostics for things like endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility. So I do think it's going that way, but it's going to take a long time. So I think that we need to kind of have a level of personal investment into our health that maybe we didn't know we had to have.
Yeah, we have to take ownership, don't we? We have to be able to know our baseline and be able to present, to doctors or GPs or whoever it might be, so that we can, explain how we feel, which is hard because there's never enough time either.
It's super hard. And even me, when I went in, so I'm somebody who has good health knowledge. Like I know a lot about health. I'm a qualified practitioner. Just having such I shriveled up. I felt very self-conscious, and I left being like, oh, I'm just a bad mom. And so it's really important. Like, even if that happens, you can go back. You don't have to be like, oh, I messed that up. I guess I'll just,
But then you also have that feeling of, I don't want to be the person that keeps going back to the doctors and I feel like something's wrong with me, but you keep getting turned away.
I don't care anymore though, right? Like, you kind of have to let go of that because... Look, maybe there will be nothing wrong, but a lot of the times there's something wrong. So you really have to push. And I think just trying to do it in a responsible way where you sit down ahead of time, you prep. So write down all the things that you want to ask, because we go in and sometimes we get a bit scared. So we're like, oh, and you can even take in a family member just to help to advocate, to help to keep you on the dialogue that you wanted to talk about. But I mean, it's really hard. It's not
hard
easy
to navigate.
It's really hard. Yeah.
If you were to start your whole wellness journey again, though, from scratch, is there anything that you would have done differently?
In terms of nutrition, I mean, I wouldn't really do anything new, because I think once I got that, I was pretty good, and it just really helped me stay super, super positive about nutrition and see nutrition as a choice that helps me to feel the way I want, rather than I have to do this because my nutritionist said, right? When you change the dialogue between I can't do that to I don't want to do that, it's so empowering. So that's good. And you can't do everything all at once. There's going to be some times where you're better able to focus on your sleep. There's going to be some times where you're better able to focus on your nutrition, and that's okay. You don't have to be exactly balanced in everything kind of at all times. Right now, I'm not balanced with sleep because of my kids. So I'm more balanced with my nutrition, because I know when I eat poorly, I'm so tired. And I'm already so tired. When I eat well, I have more energy. I can handle it more. So it's all about kind of just, again, reassessing things as you go.
And I'm sure you must have, a larger kind of investment now in the whole business that you have and your whole ethos, because you have two girls, you have two young girls, 3 and 5, did you say? Nearly
5 and 2, yeah. So Maisie's birthday was yesterday, she turned 5, and Lola's 2.
And it just makes you realise, actually, because I have a daughter as well, what their lives are going to be like as teenagers, and how they're going to face the landscape of nutrition and exercise and loving their bodies and being confident and all those different things that, we face as young girls. How do you see that that's going to change over the next 5 to 10 years?
Look, it's so hard. I really proactively try to talk about food with my girls from every angle. So I don't give them ultra-processed food at home. And, I obviously don't give a lot of added sugar. With that being said, I don't want them to go to parties and be left out and be weird. So, of course, they have all of that. And so really trying to talk to your kids about, this food is great for your energy. This food will make you strong. This one's going to help your hair or your skin or whatever. Just taking it away from bad food, good food to, well, too much of this can make us feel bad. And so we have to have this. And I think I've been trying really hard with that.
It's the same with exercise as well.
Sure.
Your kids see you working out and exercising and feeling healthy, and they take that on into their later lives as well, don't they? They understand 100%. The relationship with exercising and health.
Yeah.
And my final question, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, how have you found navigating your way through the founder's world? So becoming a founder, as a female founder as well. How has it been for you? How's that journey been?
So it's been really fantastic overall, but I mean, it's so hard. So I left the fitness business, and then I knew that I wanted to do Arta. And as I was raising money, I got pregnant again with my second. And I was like, oh, should I just stop? And I decided to keep going. And I'm so glad I did. But I mean, it was just already so hard, because it's already so challenging for women to get investment. I was also pregnant. I think the hardest thing for me is just work-life balance, right? It's about when you're a founder, you always feel like you can do more, because you can. Like, there's always so much, and you're always kind of chronically understaffed a little bit.
Yeah.
So I feel like I really need to work on switching off and spending the quality time with my girls. They're not going to be this age for much longer. They grow up so fast. So for me, it's really about how do I set those boundaries to make sure that I'm still happy, I'm still enjoying them, and I'm giving them enough time whilst doing what I need to for the business. But yeah, it's tricky.
Well, I think we all find it tricky, but I think you're doing a fantastic job of, they're learning some incredible things from you, you know, as a founder, as a mother, all the nutritional advice that they'll grow up with and have for life is incredible. Yeah. And I've really enjoyed the conversation, learning some more about nutrition, because there's things that I thought I knew about my body and the way of doing it, but actually it's really interesting to understand, your ethos and what you've created as a brand is fantastic. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.